All right. Welcome to Shelf Help. Today we're speaking with AJ Anderson, founder of Fast Pickle, the pickle juice shop brand, bringing real brine into the hydration recovery space. AJ is really a lifelong marketer and serial founder. In addition to Fast Pickle, he also runs Wild Lives, well-known Nashville media and marketing lab. I think he started in 2018 or so, as well as Flatback, which is kind of a services for equity fund. So definitely got a lot of experience, marketing career spanning automotive, action sports, energy drinks, a lot of CPG related stuff. I think actually got to start running marketing for NOS Energy at Coca-Cola back in the day. So a lot of really good experience. I think AJ started Fast Pickle out of his garage in Nashville in 2024 or so not too long ago. First year, it already sold 100,000 bottles, became Amazon's overall pick in the electrolyte shot category. So definitely doing a lot of things right. So yeah, AJ, first off, just for the listeners that are not as familiar with Fast Pickle, love it to just get quick lay of the land, just in terms of kind of the origin story, why behind the brand, core products in the lineup, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure. Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think starting kind of with the origin, we'll walk people through everything. So I run a performance agency, started in 2018, as you said, Wild Lives, and throughout the years, taking on tons of clients, traveling around the world. I was diamond status on Delta and ambassador, Bonvoy, and like I was kind of just like living the high life and what felt like the high life, And then I think I was drinking a lot. I was I was living, at least I thought. And it was 2024, I believe it was, that we got news that my wife had cancer, thyroid cancer, and we had just moved to Nashville from Los Angeles. We had I guess that would have been a 2 or 3 year old at the time, and our lives kind of just like came screeching to a halt. We're like, how is this happening? Like, what is this? We didn't know how severe it was at the time. It's like causes you to just kind of reassess your entire life. I actually just made a post about this on LinkedIn, but in that process, it was like, fuck, man, like I'm treating my body like shit. I'm treating probably my family, my friend, like I wasn't being a very good person in general. I wasn't living the way I wanted to be living. So as a family, we decided to stop traveling so much, focus more on our health, like make meals at home, do more things together, therapy, just like how can we like reconnect, in like the deepest ways. And in that process, I started just working out more. So I've like worked out off and on throughout my life. I'm a little bit bigger of a guy, always have been. And so going to the gym with my friend Andy here in town in Nashville, we would go to the Y, and every now and then he'd be like, "Let's just go hit a mile before we go into the gym." I'm like, "What are you, crazy? Like, I don't, I'm not a runner. That's crazy, man." So then we started doing it. I couldn't even get through a mile. I was just so out of breath, zero stamina, and just stuck with it over and over and again. And he had to go out of town. He was from the UK. So he had to go back to the UK for like a month. And when he was out of town, I'm like, I'm going to get really good at this shit. He's going to come back and, I'm going to be able to run 3, 4, 5 miles. So that's what I did. I just worked at it, worked at it, worked at it. And during that time, my body, I was like really hard on it. Right. And was like starting to like understand what I should do for my body to sustain that. So electrolytes and protein and, BCAAs, whatever else I needed to be able to like support that journey, as it was kind of like not a joke, but a challenge to like, be better than my friend, but also obviously a challenge to myself at the end of the day. And in that process, I would order XYZ brand, a pouch from Amazon, and it would be really cool branding. And I would, put it in my thing and mix it up, and it would be like so sweet. Right now, I don't really have a ton of patience to drink like 16 ounces of something, some like 4 or 5, 8 ounces, maybe most, mix it up, drink it. And then, so I kept buying different brands, and it would be sweet or artificially sweetened. And eventually I was just like, there's gotta be a way to get, sodium replacement essentially, but electrolytes in general in like a different vehicle. So I kept coming back in my research to pickle juice. And I remember, when I was a kid, I would race BMX, and my grandma would always be like, "Oh, drink pickle juice, cramps." So I started researching the anti-cramping properties of it. And, I just kept coming back to pickle juice. And I was like, man, it's kind of like punk rock, because I grew up in like hardcore and BMX and skating. And like, what it felt very contrarian to where the market was at. Obviously, there's some players, which we can talk about in a minute, but that coupled with building the performance agency over the last several years, I really wanted to like own a brand that I could bring to market and utilize my team kind of as the machine. So that I started down that road. I had my marketplace guy kind of deep dive Amazon and Walmart and trying to understand the gap if there was one, what it looked like, velocity, all of that stuff. And he basically came back with what he thought was a big opportunity to bring a modern challenger brand into the mix, at least on the pickle juice side of things, which little did we know those weren't our competitors at all in a good way. So that's it. Basically, that's how it kind of came to
Makes
be. And now
sense.
it's 2024. We launched the product on January 1st, 2025. Actually, everything up till that was like formulation, working on the back end. So yeah, it's kind of a long road, but really kind of cool foundational work to get to. In the Halo product is the 3-ounce pickle juice shot sold in 6, 12, and 24 packs, and now 1 gallon jug.
Terms of those early days of formulation and product development, the pitch is really, real pickle brine, no sugar. And I think what you call it is like a hypertonic formula. Back to those early days, let's just say to the first version that you made to that final version when you said, yes, this is ready to go to market. Tell me a bit about that journey of getting the final form factor you felt was ready.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so I knew I wanted it in either 2.5 or 3 ounce, because I was targeting 500 plus milligrams of sodium, which essentially is the equivalent to the sodium you would lose in like a half, or sorry, like a 5K, like 30 minutes or so of like hard work. And, I felt like that size was totally reasonable for someone to carry in their vest or like, in a pocket, like I'll carry a couple in my pocket while I'm running. So I knew that I wanted it to be in, the shot format. And then, in the journey of trying all the competitors and like trying, some homebrew stuff, I eventually landed on a co-man that I was working with on the formulation. And, we kind of took a little bit of ideas from one brand and another brand. And like, as most people do, right? Things you like and don't like and put it together. I knew I didn't want any added sugar. Um, I knew some other brands have that. I knew that I didn't want a ton of random stuff in it, but one thing that we do have is a preservative. And while that really troubled me for a long time, turns out not very many people really are concerned about it. But the reason we have the preservative is because it's real brine from real pickles. So essentially, how our process works is, we are buying brine from a manufacturer that produces pickles, and then we're doing a couple things to the brine to get it to our standards, mostly kind of adjusting the electrolyte profile and a little bit of the taste, and then bottling it here in the US and then in 3-ounce bottles, really. So honestly, like that part went a lot faster than I thought it would go. I think
Nice.
because I was so clear about what I wanted and what I didn't want from the sodium profile to the vehicle, it really wasn't that bad. And I think, like, to be fair to the other pickle juice players, like, it is kind of what we're doing here, right? Like, we are, whether they're trying to or not, be a nice contrarian solution for people who sweat and work hard, whether it's athletes or linemen or construction workers. In general, pickle juice is that option. So, from going from that base to getting to where I wanted to be wasn't super far away. It's not like I was starting with a neon colored sports drink and trying to work back from there.
That term hypertonic, what does that actually mean? And I guess why does it really matter for recovery versus I don't know, a standard isotonic sports drink?
Yeah, great question. So a couple things there to unpack. One, and we were guilty of this in the beginning, a beverage like ours, a beverage like many other electrolyte replacements that are on the market, technically we shouldn't be using the term hydration. Like, we don't hydrate, right? So it's like hydration is similar, is like a similar function to an isotonic, which basically is helping balance the electrolyte profile in your bloodstream, which is what isotonic means. Whereas hypertonic basically means we're introducing a large amount of one electrolyte or multiple electrolytes into the bloodstream for a purpose, right? So the sodium replacement, helps replace the sodium you lose in your sweat, alleviate some of the muscle issues, keeps your energy up. So that is probably one of the biggest misconceptions that I see in the industry that I'm in, like on the electrolyte supplement, is everybody calling themselves a hydration beverage. It is not hydration. So we did make that mistake early on. All the new packaging, new product, you'll never, in fact, on the new label, it literally says, here's a sample label. This product is intentionally hypertonic and formulated for rapid sodium replacement for sport. It is not intended as a hydration beverage. So, kind of like turning it around
Yeah,
and owning it the best we can. In the word hypertonic, like I purposely chose a word that not everybody understands. So they're
yeah,
going to be like,
for sure.
what's that? Interesting. I think
Just
there's two
sounds like an elite word too. Also,
exactly, right? But the nice thing is it does sound elite. It does sound like, hey, this is really going to help me take it to the next level. But also, it could not be more factual, right? Like it is like fundamentally exactly what the drink is and what it does for your body.
how did you and how do you continue to balance the focus of function versus taste? And maybe there's not really much of a trade off, but if there is, how do you think about that balance?
Well, for the 3 ounce, I think similar to cilantro, right? Like it's polarizing pickle juice. Like you like it or you don't like it. It kind of makes my job a lot easier. Like I don't have to spend a lot of time trying to convince people. If we're at an event and we're sampling product, if someone comes up and like, I don't really like pickles or pickle juice, am I going to like this? I'm like, you're definitely not then because it is pickle juice and it's strong pickle juice. So it just kind of like, it kind of weeds out the customers a little bit more, which is kind of
Yeah,
nice for us. So I think it's an amazing tasting pickle juice personally, but from our real competitors, which are on the sports drink side of things, it's probably just a little bit more challenging. But that is where innovation comes to play, in which we can talk about other
yep.
products we're introducing.
Tell me about that process of finding your co-packer. How'd you kind of know who was going to be the right one? Tweaks or adjustments did you have to make to conform to whatever their capabilities were, if any?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I don't know if you can believe this, but there's not a lot of people producing pickle juice
Doesn't surprise
in the
me.
country compared to a different supplement, right? So we didn't have a lot to choose from, but basically how we selected our co-packer was the group that we were able to negotiate and work best with, who also had a really amazing base product, which is pickles, right? So it's like they don't make the pickles for us, right? They make that for other customers. So kind of sampling the whole landscape of pickle manufacturers, which is kind of the starting place, and ending at one that we really liked the ingredients of, we liked how they operated, we liked their capabilities, and obviously the flavor. So, we started with them pretty quickly and obviously just on a small scale. I think like our first order, man, I don't even remember. I think our first order was a pallet and that would have been January. Yeah, December 2024, I guess we're actually in Florida visiting family. And so I sent one of my guys from the agency up to the facility to bring a pallet all the way down to Florida, in which we had this tiny little storage locker, like I mean, like a 4x6, in which we had a pallet. We had about 3 feet to get a little table to just pack samples, and we were just we sent out like hundreds of 6 packs to ambassadors, to friends, to family, to kind of get some buzz going, and then start fulfilling some orders from there. And then back in Nashville, we started, man, I think we would get a couple pallets, probably one pallet at a time for half the year. I think it's all I could really afford. And, the velocity wasn't super high. And the challenge is that my house in Nashville is up on a hill, up like a winding driveway. So whenever we would get freight with a lift gate, they would have to drop it at the bottom because they couldn't get up the driveway. So it was twofold. One, it was every time we would get a pallet, it's like backing one of the vehicles down, filling it up multiple trips, if needed, up to the garage, unloading into the garage, repacking, and then going to ship at the UPS store because I couldn't get a UPS truck wouldn't come pick it up either. So it was a lot of lessons early on. And, thankfully it went from, having buddies over helping pack stuff all night long to be able to fulfill orders the next day, ship stuff off to Amazon, to being able to move into a small little warehouse space in October, where we can receive and ship pallets pretty easily, thankfully.
Love that. That's
But
awesome.
yeah, quite the journey. I have photos I can send you to, Adam, if you wanted to use it to show
Yeah,
off
send
like
them over for sure. Yeah, definitely send them
like
over.
in the garage, it's like even my daughter like would come down and like at 3 or 4 and like help pack like, bottles of pickle juice. We just had like a whole line set up of people just packing orders in this garage next to like my sauna and the workbench and stuff. It was pretty funny.
You're also working on like a preservative free
Mm.
flavor blend. Does that make things harder at all in terms of the formulation? And I guess also from shelf life standpoint, and then anything else you've got coming down the pike from a product roadmap standpoint that you're comfortable sharing at this point?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the preservative thing is interesting. I've gone back and forth on it pretty heavily. It's weighed on me for a variety of different reasons. And while I'm not personally like a fan of ton of preservatives, I also understand why this specific preservative is there. Um, we have tested preservative free back and forth with this manufacturer, with other manufacturers, and at the end of the day, I think from a business perspective, the unlock is natural, right? And going to natural retail. And to be frank, I just don't care about natural retail. Like we're not going to be there. It's not where our product's destined to win, right? I think our velocity there would just never catch up to the other brands that are on the shelf. So, I think we are in currently specialty, some specialty stores around the country. I think we have the ability to be in, large like home improvement stores, right? Where like where people who are working, sweating are there to buy product. That's why specialty works for us. So I kind of just I have to make decisions as a business owner, a multiple business owner. Really, is like what are the things that are going to weigh me down and like have to focus on, and what are the things I can just focus on and move quickly, and like what are they going to do for me for the business, right? So I've basically identified that producing the preservative free blend in a way that's satisfactory to me for taste and also for how that's packaged, whether it's high pressure or high temp, that's put on the side on the back burner. Really, like it's not a priority right now. So in time, possibly, but as of right now, it's gone. However, I made the comment about introducing more people to the brand. So a product that we have been working on for, I don't know, probably I've had the idea for actually just about a year. It was
Okay.
after the Nashville Marathon, Rock and Roll Marathon last year. It was the first half marathon I ever ran in the finishers village. It was hot and like people were just wrecked. I've never been in a marathon or half marathon or anything like that. So it was all new to me. It was cool to see, but everybody was just wrecked, laying in the grass. It was hot as hell. The water station had people backed up, huge lines, but then the only other beverage there was Athletic Brewing, which I love Athletic. I don't drink alcohol anymore, so drink NA beers are great, but ultimately, I think I was looking for something a little bit healthier than that, something that could help replace those electrolytes, something that's ice cold in a can, crisp, carbonated, and that's when I had the idea for this recovery seltzer. Is like, how can we produce something that is light, is you could drink a couple of them easily, goes down, is just really refreshing. So that's what this is. This is the final
Yeah.
version of the Recovery Seltzer
Exciting.
that will be going to production probably later this month with the design help of your team, Adam.
Love it. Yeah, we're excited. We're super psyched. It's funny you mentioned some of like the less obvious channels. I had this other meat stick brand, Anthem Jerky, on it like a few months back, and they've had a lot of success. I think in Home Depot, Tractor Supply Company has had like a lot of success there. Shields, Dick's Sporting Goods, those could be a really good channel for sure.
Totally. Yep. That's exactly what we're pointing towards. And we
Yeah,
actually just got the opening order from Fleet Feet here in Nashville last
perfect.
week.
Yeah, there you go.
We're already in Fleet Feet, Roanoke, and that area, but the Nashville, obviously, it's local for us. We've been working on it for a while. They have 6 stores here. So to get that's really awesome for us to be kind of like our anchor account that we can go like, drive velocity with samplings outside. We can do events together.
Yeah.
So that's kind of continuing down that specialty direction.
From a brand identity, positioning, voice, tone, and visual identity, packaging design side of things, what were some of the key variables, things that were top of mind for you?
Man, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea. I designed the first label and it was really bad. Let me see. No, these are the newer ones. Yeah, I mean, I knew that I had the little running guy, the pickle running guy. I knew that's kind of the direction I wanted to go in. I wanted to make it really playful. I wanted to just like kind of the brand itself is just we just have fun with everything that we do.
Yeah.
So that was the goal, but man, it was like I didn't know anything. I mean, it was like flat green with like there was I don't even know the terms you would know, but like things were not popping at all. And in fact, I remember I was on the BevNET elevator pitch podcast, I think it was with
Mhm.
Ray Latif, and we had some great conversations. And one of his big things to me was like, well, your packaging, like it's kind of I can't remember exactly what he said, but essentially it was a little elementary, like it didn't really pop or whatever. And I heard him. I defended it, of course, that I wanted it to be, fun. But the more down the road we went, I mean, it wasn't even that it was so flat that I lacked features and benefits. There were no bug call outs. But at the time, we weren't in retail. We were just focused on selling D2C.
Yeah.
So then the next iteration was, let's say, mid 2025. Changing up things a little bit, keeping the pickle guy. I actually always felt like this middle iteration I'm talking about now was just a stepping stone. It was never the final. Utilizing the pickle guy, having some more features and benefits, call outs, and kind of understanding the label ecosystem of a 3 ounce, really, and like understanding the limits that I could push there. And then coming to, the most recent one, the black and like electric pickle green label. That's kind of like where I wanted to go. I think it took us a while to understand who we were as a brand,
Totally.
but knowing that like we're for I say like for the streets, right? Like for the people that are out working, out sweating, out doing the thing, and like I wanted to take that back to almost like, early days of Supreme in New York. You could see like the bar logo here of like bringing that back to like the street style. And I knew I wanted to get away from the green a little bit and go to black, bring that electric style through. Because if you look at specifically pickle juices, everything is just green, 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 green. So it gave us an opportunity to like bring a little bit more edge into it. So I feel really good about where we're at now, and I think we just have opportunities to continue to tweak it as we introduce these new innovation SKUs this year.
How do you think about positioning Fast Pickle in the broader, I guess let's just call it recovery and I guess hydration space against electrolyte powders, sports drinks, all the other stuff in terms of positioning it and differentiating it in terms of when someone's thinking about what they should buy, why they should buy Fast Pickle compare in comparison to those other broader categories, let's say.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think like okay, let's dumb down what we're doing here, right? This is all a monopoly game. Like we're all just people here that have these brands and everyone's kind of posturing for some sort of
Sure.
positioning placement, but really like we're just selling a brand and an ethos to somebody else. And hopefully they like the product as much as they like the brand. So, for us, it's like a 12 or 16 ounce sports drink or electrolyte product has its place. A stick pack or sachet powder has its place. And I think a 3 ounce shot or a 2 ounce shot or, something in that level of vehicle also has its place in terms of like a kit for somebody, right? Whether that's a runner, a cyclist, or like I mentioned, construction outdoor workers. We're seeing a lot more traffic from that cohort recently buying our product, which is awesome. Think like lunch boxes, center consoles of trucks. So, really like it's the approach of like we're a contrarian, solution essentially for electrolyte replacement. And, I think it's people that are tired of the traditional way of getting that. I think that's why what Ross is doing with Cadence is so cool because like it is it is the solution that high level athletes need, but it's delivered in a way that's really never been delivered in before. It's like an absolutely delicious beverage that, people can crush and get behind. And that's kind of what we're going for on the 3 ounce side of things.
Clearly, you've learned quite a bit about launching a brand, building a CPG brand, what it takes, a position, and everything. Let's just say one of your buddies in Nashville came up to you who said, "Hey, I'm thinking about launching a brand too. I've been working on the formulation for a while, got it pretty dialed in. I'm about to kick off brand identity, packaging, design process." What's one thing you tell them to keep top of mind, or things to avoid that could kind of trip them up along the way?
From a design perspective,
Or just the brand identity process, building out kind of the positioning and voice, all the kind of stuff in terms of just building the brand in general.
sure. Yeah, I think like what I should have done from the beginning is like just trust myself. I think like that's the push pull is like what you as a founder, as a creative think is cool versus like what what like drives velocity or like moves the needle, right? So I think that's the constant push pull. And I think like the original packaging I produce like is not something that like the first one is not something that like I personally would love. Like it's not like a sticker I would put on my car, but it's what I thought would represent the brand well, the first iteration anyway. But, you know, retrospectively, I think I would have done things a little bit differently. So that's probably what I would say is like, understand like what you think is cool. Like, why are you doing this? What's the value prop that you understand the product to deliver? And like, why you? Like, if you can answer, like, why are you the person to do this? Then you can start to understand what it should look like, I think. But then, like communicating the features and benefits depends on where they're going. If they're going D2C or retail, but we need to telling the why of both the brand and the product, how what it solves is obviously super important as well. So I think those two things are super powerful. Also, I would just tell them be prepared to eat shit for several years while you while you build this thing.
Yep, that's a good
But
thing to set the expectation too as well. That's for sure. In terms of go-to-market stuff, 100,000 bottles in year one, Amazon's overall pick in the electrolyte shot category. What have you found is just general, not just Amazon, but just in general, like what have you found has been key to profitable growth early on?
yeah, good question. There's a lot of learnings. I think, I come from the agency side, the performance side, so kind of an interesting learning there is like I didn't like read my own warning or heed my own warning, I guess you could say. Like on the agency side, when a new brand comes to us and wants to work with us, we have pretty much just say no, like you're too young, it's not going to work. Like no one knows who your brand is yet, you're going to waste your money. But I was just so excited to jump into it, and I think like understanding that there's unless you have like a pretty large investment, essentially in performance, there's like a hump you have to get over basically from like a signal perspective.
Sure.
And for a lot of brands in the beginning, it's a quite a large investment. That's why second time founders that have money and can dump it into it, they can grow pretty quickly
Yeah.
on the e-com side. But for newish people, like I mentioned before this started recording, it just takes time. So I think like starting to understand that eventually kind of limited some of the burn that they were spending on the Meta side of things, the Google side of things. But for Amazon, I think it was constantly iterating like the A plus content, constantly trying to reevaluate what we put out there. I think for me, some of the most beneficial things that I did were talk to people that have done it before, having conversations with Will Nitza and Sean Riley from Dude Wipes and, people that have like will give you the real dope on like what it takes to get there, because that knowledge is priceless. But, LinkedIn is just a beautiful place to read fancy stories, right? But when you talk to real founders about what it takes, you're like, oh shit, like that makes sense. I guess it's just going to take a couple of years, So
Yep.
understanding
Totally.
that and kind of positioning yourself for success. And like I said, just for me, it was early on. Like some of those conversations came in mid 2025, and that's when I was starting to understand. Wow, this is just going to take more time than I thought to be able to
Yeah.
catch on.
Yep.
Especially I don't want to say we're like creating a category because pickle juice exists, and there are a couple pickle juice brands that basically posture themselves for electrolyte replacement in sport. But it's effectively like we're growing that category together, like us and these other brands, right? So people don't know that category exists. So it is doubly challenging for us, and I think like I see a lot of founders talk about how that's like the double payoff when you help grow a category and your brand. It's like, that's awesome. Like check back in with me in 9 years. Right now it's really challenging, but I think it's exciting at the same time. I think we've set out to be a challenger brand. I think didn't understand how much of a challenger category we were also going to be at the same.
And now you've got this festival partnership that you recently locked up, which I think is contributing a pretty significant portion to revenue as well, which is awesome. Yeah. Tell me all about this festival partnership and kind of what it means in terms of, how it's going to take the brand to the next level.
Sure. Yep. So without getting too far into it on this podcast, we partnered with a company called Danny Wimmer Presents. So Danny Wimmer, himself and a couple other partners in on the deal are ultra marathon runners. And so we got connected with them through music. And essentially, they love pickle juice. They've been like using it, when they're in like, you know, Chamonix and like different events, like trying to like, utilize it to be better runners and like get rid of cramping or, any sort of issues they're having on course. And they like the vehicle of it as well, which is awesome. So conversations kind of started there and, ended with like, hey, I think there's something that we can do at the festivals. So some of their festivals would be Aftershock, Louder Than Life, Bourbon and Beyond, Rockville. So really major rock festivals in the United States. And the majority of them are during summer, right? So it's like hot days, long days, a lot of people getting dehydrated, sweating like mad. I think, I don't know. I'm going to say this now and then I'll tell you if you need to cut it out. But one of the guys told me that at one festival, they'll do like 20 semi trucks of bottled water, like 20. And like that is an unreal amount of water.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we were like, we tested it actually last year in the fall at Aftershock Festival in California, just selling 3-ounce shots in the bar area at one of the bars at the festival, and then also having them in the green room. And the response was pretty awesome. We sold out of all the product before the end of the festival. I think we only sent them like 8 or so cases, but I was just surprised by how well it did considering festival markups and how much things costed, something like that. So yeah, so going into this year, we agreed on a full rollout in 2026. So we
Amazing.
just finished Rockville, and I think everybody was surprised still by how well it did, which was really awesome. And I think they've been an awesome partner for us in like understanding how this product reaches the broader market. Defining the 3-ounce early on for athletes, and then really just for people who work, which is kind of what I always think about when I think about someone that's going to need a 3-ounce, as opposed to something like Cadence, right? Is real like athletic, like high
Yeah.
performing. This is kind of just for the everyman. They've been really awesome with that, and I think that's where I've had the pleasure and ability to move forward some of the SKU innovations that we've been talking about. I won't get into the other one that I'm having some issues with, but the seltzer, the Recovery Seltzer, for example. I didn't mention this before, but the flavoring is like a pickle margarita. It's like a lime salt pickle flavor, very
Sounds
light.
awesome.
It's honestly delicious. But and even just something as simple as the can, right? I originally wanted a 12-ounce traditional. I like that more traditional feel. But in working with them on understanding the festival goer, which ultimately is going to be generally who I'm targeting with this more accessible, it's still pickle forward beverage. It's just not as strong as the shot. Understanding that they would prefer a 12-ounce sleek based off of the historical sales data, essentially. So it's kind of been my way of like learning some level of like retail or specialty retail without having to take those major risks of like potentially having a buyback or slotting fees. It's like literally real time with the fans at a festival. So going into Bourbon and Beyond and Louder Than Life, which I think are August and September in Louisville, I was actually just in LA meeting with the team. We're rolling out kind of a wider offering at that event with different SKUs. And then also, I think there's like 80 plus bars at each festival. So like
Wow.
trying to offer them at each bar. We're going to have our own activation there. I'm trying to focus on how do we take that festival goer, adopter at the festival and bring them into the ecosystem digitally for Fast Pickle after. So, we're introducing a lot of QR codes and a lot of different ways to incentivize them to get to our site and put their email in while they're at the event so that we can retain them and keep nurturing those people and stay in touch with them. So that's a big part of what we're doing this year. I estimate that'll probably be about 25 to 30% of our revenue
Okay.
in 2026, which is awesome. And the agreement
That's
is 2
awesome.
years. So in the next year as well, which would be awesome for continuing to test new SKUs. But yeah, I mean, I think, and they've already submitted a PO for this. So like that helps me move forward. Right. And as a kind of an anchor customer to be able to test some of the things, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's
And
awesome.
they're
That's awesome.
runners. So like I was out in LA and we all went for a run and, went to dinner together, and there was a trainer there. We were chatting with the trainer about, pickle juice and everything. So it's like everybody is very mindful of wellness and what it takes to just kind of be the best at what you do, whether that is a business owner, a runner, a father, husband, whatever.
Totally. I love that. Beyond the festivals, Amazon, D2C, you mentioned retail a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So, my relationship with retail is love hate, mostly on the hate side. But, I think like so my first job with Knowles Energy Drink, right? Going to NACS show in Chicago a bunch and then dealing with C stores. But I was on the marketing side. So like leveraging an athlete appearance at a C store. I got to learn kind of the leverage side, the mechanisms around that. But then with Fast Pickle, you're going to fancy food and then, Expo West, even though I'm not natural, just learn as much as I can. What my takeaway has been, it's kind of similar to like how I live my life and how I started the agency is like, there are like the suggested guidelines and the rules for like how you do things, but then it's like, why? Like, why do we do everything a certain way? Like, why, everyone's dying to get with the KE or like distributors. And I think there's just like so many rules that are still like left to be broken about how we approach retail or anything really in life in general, but in business and CPG world in general. So, I mean, essentially what I just started doing is just reaching out to people. I just started cold emailing as many specialty stores as I could. I would say this is in the fall, maybe. I emailed, excuse me, probably 1,000 around the country, large chain, small chain, one off. Essentially what it came down to was, let's say I sent 1,000 emails. I maybe got 200 responses. So I'm like, all right,
Pretty good.
20%. That's not bad,
Pretty good. It's
and
pretty good.
probably like, maybe 150 of those asked me to send samples. So sending samples to everybody. And then out of that, we probably landed really only like got orders from maybe like 20 stores out of those. But like I said, some included like Fleet Feet, Roanoke, and, like there's a mountain bike chain in Montana and Idaho that ordered 8 cases. So, I mean, there are some pretty awesome relationships that came out of it, but I haven't even reapproached that methodology. Like I think that's just a great way is to just like reach out and back then, I mean, the brand was much smaller. We didn't have as much awareness about it. So I think I'll reapproach that again and like trying to find new ways. But I mean, when I'm in different cities, like I'll just stop into stores and introduce myself and explain the product and leave samples. And I think that's just what I try to do. I try to keep a couple of bottles on me at all times and try to just leave
Yeah.
samples for everybody. One of our first our first like retail store ever is here in Nashville, Framework. It's a sauna cold plunge studio. Shout out Alan. So Alan, this was like February 2025, literally like a month after
Super
launching.
early. Yeah.
He emailed me. He wrote on the website. He's like, "Hey, I'm into this pickle juice thing. Like, I would love
Wow.
to like try some samples." And I looked it up. I'm like, Framework, it's in Nashville. I'm like, I wrote back. I'm like, "Hey man, like you're in Nashville. I'm in Nashville." He's like, "Oh, I didn't even realize it." So I literally went down there like the next day with a case of product and met with Alan and saw the facility. And, Alan's been really awesome. He's brought in a lot of like local CPG brands into his facilities as well. So he was kind of the early adopter. And, so we're carried at both of his locations. And then like we'll do events there with him and some of the other brands. So that was just kind of like a really cool way to like start our kind of like
Yeah.
retail
Totally.
journey, I guess you could say, and that early on too. And especially because here in Nashville, anytime we're sampling, everyone's like, where can I buy it? Where can I buy it? So you have to have that anchor to drive back to. And now here in Nashville, we're in Framework. There's a series of climbing gyms. So
Nice. Yeah.
actually, my wife and I went on a date night to the climbing gym and I was like looking at their assortment. I'm like, man, this is like really weird product. There's like nothing here that really like resonates. And then I remembered, this is kind of funny in terms of business data, BI, that in our Amazon market basket analysis for a couple weeks in a row, I was seeing all this climbing equipment purchased alongside Fast
Wow.
Pickle. Yeah, so I went home and, I started I added the GM, I think, on LinkedIn, and it was probably like a year long process to be able to get someone to even talk to me. But when they did, they agreed to take some in. So we just got a reorder, I think, a couple days ago, actually. So
Nice.
that's been a really cool relationship. And then getting into the Fleet Feet stores. I can't remember if it was recording or not, but yeah, got our opening order last week for Fleet Feet Nashville, which is really awesome.
That's awesome, man. That's exciting.
I think the biggest takeaway for me of this business has just been, like I said, I think like when you enter a new segment like CPG outside of my 5 years at Coca-Cola many moons ago, yeah, CPG was new to me. And I think what's nice is like people can it's like a fresh perspective, right? Of like how can we come into this industry with like a kind of a challenger mindset and do things differently and like look at what the rule book is and try to tear it up and just do it our own way. And like the cool thing is that that'll work either way. It'll work like right away. Like if it hits, it'll hit, like a big TikTok video or something, it'll explode, or it'll work over time because you're still doing things your own way, an authentic way, and growing a brand. So that's just
Totally.
how I approach it. It's taking a little bit longer for us, as far as I think, anyway. But super happy to be here. Happy to like talk to everybody about Fast Pickle and educate the masses on the power of what we're doing.
Yeah, I love the brand. I feel like it's only the beginning for you guys. I think that's a great way to close it, AJ. I appreciate the time. I think that's the pod.